back to the Daytona Beach Motor Mouse. I'm Ryan Pritt. That's Ken Willis over there in the much better looking shirt than the one I have on. Patriotic today, Ken, even. I like that. 4th of July, right?
It's the 4th of July weekend. And
That's
I'm
right.
wearing, and to continue celebrating the Chicago weekend, I'm wearing my Mike Ditka cap that I bought at Ditka's restaurant in Chicago, which sadly did not survive the COVID and closed up. One of my favorite places ever. Not just because it was Ditka, but it was just a great bar.
You don't
Anyway,
have any you don't have any deep dish on the table in front of you there or anything, do you? Because I'm gonna be upset I didn't get an invite if you do.
No deep dish, shallow dish. No, my only dish is downstairs. I think she was getting ready to vacuum.
All right, well, before we get started, it's been a couple weeks and I've gotten so many emails, so many texts, so many, people reaching out wondering where America's newest favorite game show has gone. So to bring it back, and this, by the way, it's a little tougher this week than maybe you would think. But Ken, was yesterday's race better than golf?
Boy, I tell you, am I allowed to have a tie?
You're allowed. Yeah, I'll allow it.
Yeah, I got to call that one a tie because, first of all, if the tour event goes to overtime, goes to sudden death, that adds to the flavor, obviously. And now you throw in the fact that it was little Ricky Fowler winning for the first time in, 4 years or whatever. And it was a well-received victory. The NASCAR race, it was a received victory. I don't know how well received it was, but everybody seems to like the Kiwi. So I guess he's gonna dominate the discussion here along with other things over the next few minutes. So let's get to it.
Yeah, and that's Shane Van Gisbergen. Is that correct? Yes.
I thought Shane Bader Ginsburg, I think, is what I had written down.
But that's still closer than Joey Logano was post race yesterday. I don't know if you got to saw that where he referred to him as hamburger at one point, but we're gonna try to do better than that here. But congrats to Shane. Man, I don't know where to start with that thing. You had Mother Nature just wiping everything out for a day and a half. All you poor Miranda Lambert and Charlie Crockett fans, one of the which is on this podcast, right? I mean, where do you start with yesterday's race, Ken? So much hype, so many question marks, and the race, I mean, I thought for the most part delivered.
Yeah, there were some things that happened that I didn't see coming, but what I did see coming, which was going to be a lot of that, we got it late in the race, that one pileup when it seemed like half the field was knotted together there, and they had to go peel them apart. I was expecting more of that and glad that we didn't get it. So what I wasn't expecting, I don't think anybody knew this was coming, was to see several cars crash nose first into those tire barriers and just go completely under the tires and lift the tires up. And, they couldn't back out because they were at a slick part of the track and had to be called the tow truck in. And I think, for all I know, Noah Gragson is still buried underneath some tires somewhere on that race course. Boy, what a day he had.
Well, I'll tell you something unbelievable. If you haven't checked that far back in the results, Noah Gragson finished 3 spots ahead of Tyler Reddick yesterday. So there's that. But yeah, I was actually texting a couple of my friends. I don't know what the wreck counter was, but between Gragson, Martin Truex, and who was the other one there? There was another one that brought out a caution 2 or 3 times, but there were some wipeouts there. You could tell some of the. I mean, I was impressed that they were able to hold it together as well as they did, but there were definitely some corners missed, and obviously that whole wet, dry, rain tire, slick tire thing had to make it so much harder too,
and so much more dramatic. I mean, as a viewer, knowing that they're going to slicks, and I said when they all en masse started going to the slicks, I said that course still looks a little too wet to me. Especially toward the back corner there, coming near the end of the circuit where there were still puddles. And that's where they were having to tiptoe through those, relatively speaking. And I thought, boy, it's going to get ugly here. And it didn't. I mean, for some, it did, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But I thought that really, the slicks versus the groove tires really added an element that, you'll usually only see in IndyCar and F1. And I get, and IMSA sports car racing. Well, come to mention it, almost every other form of racing but NASCAR. So that added an element that we rarely see. And so that was fun. I enjoyed that.
Speaking of every other form of racing and what they may or may not do, James Small, crew chief for Martin Truex, suggested that perhaps all the rest of them may have, let the teams know they were shortening the race before non-teams pitted and gained an advantage before the announcement ever came out. I was texting you yesterday. That was as good as Chicago was yesterday. That was a bad look in my opinion. And it clearly did give, you look at Justin Haley and where he finished. Where was he running before that whole fiasco? Not anywhere close to where he was.
I think he might have been ahead of Noah Gragson.
Yeah, and we're cutting the race short for time, but we also have time for overtime, which to me is like, well, why don't you just run 5 or 10 more green flag laps, set a time, cut it off. Hey, we're cutting it off at 8:20. This is what you're racing to. I don't know what your thoughts about that were, but I was not a huge fan of the mid-race. Hey, it's this many laps now. You guys that just pitted, that's awesome for you guys.
I don't know what if there was an alternative to that, and maybe you just gave me one and then went in one ear and out the other. But
most of what I say usually does.
Yeah, I mean, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation in my mind. I don't know how they could have a perfect solution to that. Maybe you're right. Maybe a timing deal. Maybe we're going to run to 8:30 or 8:45 instead of so many laps. Maybe that's the thing to do. I don't know. I'm sure. I assume they'll beat that around here in meetings post mortem and then see if there is a better idea. And somebody out there usually has a better idea. So we'll see how that shakes out.
And it just put some of the. I mean, Christopher Bell was clearly the best car for the first half of the race at least. And then you get him back in traffic, and then he gets caught in that mess you were talking about a minute ago, and then. Him and Reddick both ended up taking themselves out. And I think a lot of that was trying to make up too much ground too fast. And that may have been the most impressive thing about our guy. Let's just call him SVG so I don't mess this up again. But mistake free and took it, as it came to him. And it was impressive to watch that guy work the last 20 laps of that race.
I was going to suggest that Christopher Bell maybe he should have done like Shane did and get out in front of that mess so he didn't get caught up in it. I kept thinking, watching the first stage and the second stage and watching how Christopher Bell just, he had them covered. I mean, good Lord, was he checked out. I just kept thinking back to Bill France Jr. if he was around and knowing all that went into getting this race in Chicago, I could just see him up in the control tower just looking at the others and going, he's stinking up the show. That's what he said. I don't need anybody stinking up the show. And then Bell was stinking up the show. And they might have had to find some mysterious some debris and throw some yellows just to keep bringing him back. He was very impressive. And that's, you hate it for him, but my goodness, what a run. They had to feel good about that. And there's 2 more road courses coming up shortly.
Yeah. And they wouldn't have had to done the debris thing as long as Noah Gragson was still out there running around. They weren't that far from a caution. Shout out to our guy. No, just a joke. Going to Atlanta this week to turn the page for a second. The restrictor plate race that isn't a restrictor plate race, but kind of is, but kind of isn't, right?
Yeah.
And this thing, as it was explained, is supposed to kind of get further and further away from that pack thing. The more this surface, is aged and all that. I still think we're going to see a good bit of that this week. I think it's still a couple years away, but there's been some guys consistently at the front of this thing since it's been repaved. Ryan Blaney in particular is one. Of course, Joey Logano won it. They're just a couple months back. So who are you looking at this week?
I know it's a fun week to pick a long shot because of the plate race factor of Atlanta nowadays. And it's fun to pick a long shot or maybe or somebody not among the short list of favorites, maybe a Bubba. Or Corey LaJoie is always our favorite long shot at Atlanta since he damn near won it a couple of years ago. But I don't know. I just have a hunch that this is the week that Chase is going to get it done, and he's going to do it at his, the closest thing he has to a hometown race. And I think he won this one. He won Atlanta last year. I don't know if it was the first one or second one, but I believe I'm right on that, which means I might or might not.
That's the one that's the one that LaJoie should have won. He actually took care of LaJoie there at the end.
That's it. That's all coming back to me. think this is the week. Yeah, he's just hanging in. He's hanging in that top 5 the last month or so. I mean, he's running about as well as anybody. He's one of the 2 or 3 most consistent over the last month. And Blaney, on the other hand, has finished in the 30s each of the last 2 weeks since he's come back from, from that big hit. Or no, I guess one of them was the big hit. And then this week he was way deep in the pack. He might have been last for all I know. But yeah, I don't know. Chase, gonna stick with the people's choice.
Give me
people's chase.
Give me Brad Keselowski this week. He should have won this race a couple months ago, and it's time, man. Those cars have been good enough, and I think this is it. Although your long shots, Corey LaJoie, a good call. Daniel Suarez is a top 5 machine at Atlanta, by the way. If you look in recent history here, I think he's got a good shot as well. So with that,
Ty Dillon's a good little plate racer, as they say.
There you go.
Back to Noah Gragson. Before we leave Noah Gragson, I don't know if you saw the commercials where he was and the pictures of him they showed yesterday wearing that bacon suit, like a leisure suit with bacon all over it, or pictures of bacon, drawings of bacon. If you're going to dress like that at an event, at a signing at a Wendy's, boy, I tell you better produce on Sunday. And I mean, for him to dress in that outfit and then go out there and race and kind of look like a guy who was dressed in a bacon outfit behind the wheel. I mean, that had to be maybe the worst weekend of his racing career, I think. And we're big Noah fans here. We're pulling for him hard.
Hey, you tell me one sponsor that got more airtime Sunday than Wendy's did. To me, he did his job. That's all we're gonna say.
That's another good point.
Anyway, go get you a Baconator, and thanks for watching. We're gonna bow out, and hopefully we have plenty more to talk about next week. I'm Ryan Pritt. That's Ken Willis. Thanks for tuning in.